Hey guys, welcome back to the Curly Reader. My name's Amanda, and today I want to share with you my all-time top 10 favorite historical fiction books. Okay, so in honor of Historathon, I thought that it would be timely for me to share with you my updated, favorite historical fiction books. I have posted in the past some favorites here and there, but these are what I consider to currently be my top 10 of all time. So, some of these are newer, some of these are older. There's just a little bit of everything in here. Um, these will not be in ranked order because I can't do that. I already picked 10 out of all of them. I cannot, it would be splitting hairs to figure out the ranking of each of them. But I do want to start with middle grade. I have 3 middle grade historical fiction books in this pile. And the first of which is When the World Was Ours by Liz Kessler. I read this during middle grade March this past year and loved it. This is a World War II historical fiction. There's not many. There's a couple, but there is not many World War II historical fictions in this book, in this pile. But this one is World War II, and it follows 3 kids that are, I think it's their 9th birthday or their 8th birthday. And in 1936, and 2 of them are Jewish, one of them is Austrian, and it's just kind of their story of how they kind of go their separate ways throughout the war, and it follows each of them individually and how their storylines are continuously intertwined while they continue to grow up during the war, and it was so good. Um, it was just a phenomenal book. This is one that I continue to think about. It is one that I think is for upper middle grade, because there is some off the page, just kind of harder topics, I guess, to discuss. And so there are probably like things that you would want to look into before handing this to a younger child, but it was phenomenal. Could not recommend that one more. Another one is an oldie but a goodie. It is one that I have talked about for quite a while on my channel, and that is Until Tomorrow, Mr. Marsworth by Sheila O'Connor. This is a book set during the Vietnam War and follows our main protagonist, who I'm not going to be able to, Renee, who has become a news girl. She delivers newspapers to the different neighbors, whatever. She's living with her grandmother and her brothers. Her mother has recently passed away, and her father is working out of state. This is set in Minnesota. And so she gets a newspaper route. Wow, that was a really long way of saying it. She gets a newspaper route. And she goes around to introduce herself to all of her new clients or customers, and this one old man does not answer the door. So she leaves him a note, and he never writes her back. But instead of taking that as a hint, she continues to leave him note after note after note. This is an epistolary novel, so it is told completely in letters. So eventually he writes back, and it is the back and forth between Renee and this elderly neighbor, Mr. Marsworth, and it is so good. There is a lot of discussion in here about the climate around conscientious objectors during the Vietnam War and pacifism and what that looked like during this time in history. And Renee is very concerned because her brother is getting ready to graduate high school, which means he would have to sign up for the draft, or he would be draftable unless he gets into college. And so she really wants him to get into college so that he doesn't have to go to war. And it is so good. Highly, this one made me cry, like sobbing cry. So yeah, another good one. All right, and then the last middle grade on this list is The Length of a String by Alyssa Brent Wiseman. This is one that is dual timeline. So we have the timeline in the past, which is told completely in diary format, and then we have the present day timeline. In the present day timeline, we have, I gotta look at her name, Amani, who is a black girl who was adopted by a Jewish family. So she is Jewish. She's been raised Jewish. And she finds out that her grandmother on her mom's side of the family has recently passed away and left her all of her books. And one of those books is her diary. And so she starts reading her diary and finds out about the time that I think it's her great grandmother actually, and the time that she came over to the United States from Luxembourg during World War II. And so you're getting those diary entries while also getting the current day, what's going on with Amani. Amani is getting ready for her bat mitzvah. I can never remember which one is for boys and which one's for girls, but she's getting ready for her mitzvah. We'll just say that. And so she's having to do some research about World War II, and she has decided that for her mitzvah, she wants to ask her parents to look into finding her birth parents, which is does not go over well with her parents. So there's a lot of discussion about adoption and what that looks like. This was not my favorite portrayal of adoption, but the historical aspect of it and the links between historical and present day I thought were really, really well done. And so that's why this one is on my list. This is another one that made me cry many times throughout the book. And it was a good one. So I highly recommend this one as well. So those were my middle grade books. I also have one YA book on this list, and it had to be a Ruta Sepetys. Really, this is like a placeholder for every Ruta Sepetys book. This is Between Shades of Grey. This is my favorite of Ruta Sepetys. Ruta writes a lot of historical stories that aren't really told by a lot of people. This one particularly has to do with a Lithuanian. Wow. Lithuanian girl who her and her mom and her brother are taken prisoner during World War II by the NKVD and transported to a work camp in Siberia. So this is set in Lithuania and then in Siberia, and it basically just chronicles their time throughout the war and how they survive or don't or whatever, and the people that they meet along the way. It is super, super powerful, super well done. Ruta has family that is Lithuanian, and so she traveled a lot and got a lot of firsthand stories for the writing of this book. I know that. And the research that went into this, like every character is the representation of a real person. And yeah, it was just really, really well done. But really, any Ruta Sepetys book would be a great one to put on this list, but this one is my favorite. All right. Another World War II, my favorite World War II adult novel is The Storyteller by Jodi Picoult. This is the story of, what is her name? Sage, who is a baker, and she is dealing with a lot of grief after losing both of her parents. And so she's going to this like grief support group, and she befriends this elderly gentleman in her group, and he starts coming by her bakery. And then one day he asks her to do a favor, and that would be to help kill him because he is a former Nazi and she is Jewish and he is looking for absolution. So you get this storyline, this present day storyline of Sage as she's really trying to determine what's right, what's wrong, what should I do? And then you get the historical side, which is this gentleman's story, and you get his side of the story, as well as Sage's grandmother, who is a World War II survivor. And so you're getting her grandmother's historical perspective, you're getting the gentleman's perspective, who became the Nazi soldier. This is a book for me that really helped me humanize some of the, not all, but some of the Nazi soldiers and how they got to where they were. It doesn't, to me, make anything that they did okay. I don't think it was portrayed that way, but it did help me understand how the progression of how things got to the point they were by the time the war came to be. And so this for me was just super thought-provoking. Jodi Picoult is known for kind of taking what you think about a situation and turning it on its head, and she does that in this book. It's one that has a lot of twists and turns and just made me kind of look at the war in a different, not in a different perspective that I thought like the other side was right or wrong or, whatever. But it helped me just see the humanity on both sides of it. And yeah, that's all I'm going to say. But I really, really highly recommend this one. I really enjoyed it. All right. Next, let's finish out the World War II. I'll show you my last World War II book that I have on this list, and that is Beneath a Scarlet Sky by Mark Sullivan. This was my first read of 2022. Sorry, I didn't remember what year it was. But this was my first read of this year, and this is a historical fiction book that is based really solidly on one man's story, and that is, what was his name? Pino Lela. Pino Lela was a teenager when war broke out in Italy. This is set in Milan. Milan? Yes, in Milan. And this follows his journey. In the first part of the book, his parents sent him to this monastery up in the Alps, and he starts helping people escape through the Alps because he is a very avid skier and mountain climber. And so he is able to help Jews escape and other people escape through the Alps into Switzerland. Geography is escaping me, but I'm guessing it's Switzerland, to get away from the Nazis that have invaded Italy. And then as he gets to the age where he is going to have to enlist in the military, his parents basically force him to join the Nazi military so that he will not be sent to the front lines. Through a series of events, he becomes the driver for one of the high-ranking commandants in Milan, and he starts to become a spy for the Allies. And so this has a lot of stuff in it, but it was so good and it was so compelling. There is some controversy as to how accurate the real stuff is in this, but I just read this as a historical fiction and I thought it was phenomenal. It's kind of chunky, it's kind of lengthy, and it just kept wanting I kept wanting to know what was coming next, and it ended on a very satisfying note for me. But there were definitely moments in this book where I was like, no, and so it was a good one. I highly recommend you read this. It's a different story of World War II. You don't read a lot about things happening in Italy, and so I thought that this was a really, really great one for a World War II historical fiction. All right, now let's get out of World War II and let's go into the 1970s or 60s, 1960s, and let's talk about Diane Chamberlain. Diane Chamberlain's Necessary Lies. This is set in the 1960s, like I said, in North Carolina, and it has to do with the eugenics movement, which was the involuntary sterilization of specific classes of people. This specifically follows two different perspectives. The first of which is Ivy, who lives on a farm. She's 15 years old. She has epilepsy, I believe. And her sister has epilepsy as well. Her sister has been sterilized. Wow, my words just went whoop right out my brain. But her sister has been sterilized, and she has a social worker that is coming to visit her on a regular basis. Her name is Jane, and we're getting Jane's point of view as well as Ivy's point of view alternating throughout the book. So in Jane's point of view, she's dealing with Ivy and her sister, who are living in pretty severe poverty, and she's being told by her not superiors, but the people that work above her at work, that she needs to have these girls both sterilized, and she does not feel that that is right, and so she's kind of bucking the system, and it doesn't go over well, and it's just kind of all about that. I found this book super, super interesting. My uncle has epilepsy and was raised in the 1950s and 60s, and so it just was one of these books that I viewed in a very realistic mindset, because this could have been my family, like it could have hit really, really close to home. Anyway, and so it was just one of those books that really, I think that this would make a really, really, really good book club book, because I think you could have a lot of really good discussion, because there is a lot of moral gray area in this book. And so, yeah, that's what I'm going to say about this one. All right, next, the 1970s. Let's talk about The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna. Whoo, guys, this book You want to talk about crying? I cried and I cried and then I cried some more. This is a book that follows the Albright family, specifically Cora Albright. Her dad is a Vietnam War vet. He has been back from the war and has kind of become extremely paranoid and become very prepper-ish. And so he decides that he is going to move his entire family and live in the woods of Alaska. And this is really just the story of Cora and her survival. Her father is very abusive, both verbally and physically and emotionally. And so it is her story of surviving the elements while also surviving the abuse within her own home. She's very isolated from society where they live. And so it's just, like I said, her story, and it is beautiful and wonderful. And this cover is amazing. And I don't know what else to say about this book, but it is written extremely well. And I would highly recommend reading it. It's another chunker. All right, next, let's talk about the 1980s, which some would probably say, Amanda, that is not historical. And I would tend to agree, except for me, historical fiction books are about a time period, a specific time period written in the past, that the time period is relevant to the story. And this is one of those books. This is Hum If You Don't Know the Words by Bianca Murray. And this is a story that takes place during apartheid in South Africa. And it is about a 10-year-old little girl and a 10-year-old little white girl and a 50-year-old black woman who cross paths, and their kind of journey through the chaos that is apartheid. It does focus on a specific kind of uprising event, but really this is about what we are teaching our children and how we can look past those barriers and break down walls throughout, just by looking at each other as human beings. And it was amazing. The writing is amazing. It is one of my favorite books of all time. And I absolutely love it. I've read it twice. It is so good. So if you have not still have not read Hum If You Don't Know the Words, please go read it. You will not be sorry, and you will learn a lot that you probably didn't know before, like me. So lastly, and certainly not least, is A Gentleman in Moscow by Amor Towles. This is a book that spans almost a century. It starts in, it starts in 1922, and it spans the entire life of this gentleman, Count Rostov, who finds himself under house arrest in the Metropole Hotel in Moscow. And so he is not allowed to leave this hotel, and if he leaves, he will be arrested and most likely executed. And so it is just a story. It all takes place in this hotel. This is an extremely character-driven novel because there's not a lot that can happen in a hotel, but it was beautifully done. The writing was impeccable. It was such good writing. And this is one that I am a huge audiobook person. I would recommend reading this one with your eyeballs because to me, the audio doesn't do it justice. The writing is so beautiful. You got to slow it down and you got to read it with your eyes. And that for me did the trick. And I loved my time with Count Rostov. And he is one of my favorite characters in literature. It's just such a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful story. And so, yeah, this is the last one on my list. So these are my 10. Let's see if I can get them all up here. 10 favorite historical fiction books. Oh my goodness. I have to flip this stack. Let's see, because they're all upside down. Ready? Can I do it? 1, 2, 3. Flip. Oh, okay. Okay, we got it. There. That's as good as it's going to get. 10 of my all-time favorite historical fiction novels in honor of Historathon. Let me know what your favorite historical fiction novels are down below in the comment section. Also, if you've read any of these and have opinions about them, as always, I love to hear that down below as well. And that's going to do it for today. So I hope that you enjoyed this. I hope that you stick around and subscribe. And until next time, see ya!